Sahana and Aneesha present Threats to the Great Lakes.
70% of the Earth's surface is covered with water.
97% of the water on Earth is salt water, which is impotable. 3% of the water on Earth is fresh water, which is potable.
2/3 of that is ice, evaporated, or in aquifers. Only 1/3 of the fresh water is surface water.
20% of that fresh water is found in the Great Lakes. If that wasn't bad enough, we continue to pollute the Great Lakes. This video will be taking you through these problems and solutions.
Lake Superior is the largest of the Great Lakes with a surface area of 31,700 square miles. It is also oligotrophic.
The size of Lake Superior is the biggest problem because if a chemical was dumped into the Great Lakes, it will take a long time to leave the lake, which can affect the wildlife. Global warming is a big issue because it warms up the climate, which will warm up the lake, which will affect the cold water fish.
Lake Michigan is the second largest Great Lake and also is oligotrophic. The main threat to Lake Michigan is invasive species. Invasive species are species that aren't native to an ecosystem. In the past couple of decades, there have been at least 25 invasive species that have entered the Great Lakes. These include round goby, zebra mussels, and Asian carp.
Lake Huron has a surface area of 23,000 square miles and has a volume of 850 cubic miles. Lake Huron is an oligotrophic lake. Lake Huron suffers from the same fate as Lake Michigan and is ravaged by invasive species. A big threat to Lake Huron is the bacterial organisms. Effects of the bacterial organisms in these regions have included localized beach closing due to E. coli contamination.
Lake Erie is the shallowest of the Great Lakes and is eutrophic. One big threat to Lake Erie are the old sewer systems, which dump raw sewage directly into the lake. Another threat are algae blooms, which are caused when farmers' fertilizer is sent into the lake, which causes the algae to bloom at an unnatural rate, which takes away a lot of oxygen from the lake. This makes it hard for fish to thrive in these locations.
The smallest of the Great Lakes is Lake Ontario. It is also a eutrophic lake. The problem with Lake Ontario is the industrial pollution and the sewer systems, which affect wildlife and pollute the lake heavily.
Like we said earlier, invasive species are one of the greatest threats to the Great Lakes. 30% of invasive species come through by attaching themselves to the bows of ships and then detaching when they reach the Great Lakes. Then they reproduce exponentially.
Another way invasive species can be brought into the Great Lakes is when the people visit a different country and buy something like fish as a souvenir, and then when they don't work out, they throw them away and they end up in the Great Lakes.
Like we said earlier, one of the greatest threats to the Great Lakes are industrial pollutions. Many industrial companies will put their garbage very close to the shore, and if some of it blows in, it can negatively affect the wildlife.
Pollutants have affected the Great Lakes severely, causing E. coli contamination, which affects the wildlife.
Pollution from garbage has severely affected the Great Lakes. The easiest way to stop this is to reduce, reuse, and recycle. As you do this, you can get rid of waste in landfills and you can help the environment.
The solution to algae blooms is by purchasing organic food. This means that farmers don't have to use fertilizer, which stops algae blooms completely.